Hi, everyone. Um, Many thanks to Mo, Ryan, Kyle, and the CSEF crew for the opportunity to speak today. So, the title of my presentation is Skateboarding's Bastard Child, the Death and Revival of Freestyle Skateboarding. And a bastard child is a term that emerged in Britain during the medieval period to refer to a child born out of wedlock, or as legal circles put it at the time, an illegitimate child. But bastard child is also a term that freestylers have used to describe their marginalized positionality in skateboarding writ large. Indeed, the dance like and choreographed subdiscipline of freestyle is grossly misrepresented as dead, ridiculed as non normative and wimpy, and has become an overlooked taboo topic within the dominant skateboard world, all of which illegitimate freestyle. But why is freestyle misrepresented as dead or a topic avoided altogether within the mainstream skateboard industry? So, the aim of this presentation is twofold. One, to illustrate how the hypermasculinity of the street skateboarding industry and its homophobia in the late 80s contributed to the death and discursive suppression of freestyle. And two, to shed light on the ways in which the modern day freestyle scene leverages its mainstream image as dead to stay alive. The end of Rodney Mullen's 1989 part in Rubbish Heap is a useful point of departure for examining the dominant skateboard industry's aversion toward freestyle. Let's watch. As we have just witnessed, street skater Jeremy Klein stomps the freestyler's board in half and hands him a street skating setup. Not only was this the first audiovisual instance of focusing a board, but this gesture also tacitly communicated to Mullen and us, the viewers, that the dance-like sub-practice of freestyle, which emphasizes grace and artistry, was lame and out of fashion. And due to time constraints, I couldn't show the rest of this part, but the video continues with Mullen laughing hysterically at the unexpected loss of his board and describing the street board's large dimensions as making him feel kind of manly in comparison to his smaller freestyle setup. Uh, Klein's violent act of focusing the freestyle board and Mullen's subsequent ascription of manliness onto street skating invoked the gendered opposition between the oft-described effeminate and wimpy subpractice of freestyle and the hypermasculine and destructive realm of street skating. Put another way, the world's first focused board symbolizes the hypermasculine style of street skating aggressively killing off the feminized freestyle other, which is especially apparent when we consider that shortly after Rubbish Heap was released, pure freestyle done entirely on flat terrain was no longer covered in dominant skateboard magazines or team videos. And I contend that the suppression of freestyle is largely due to the hypermasculinity and homophobia of street skating that emerged in the late 80s. But when and how did skateboarding's hypermasculinity and homophobia precipitate at that time? While the skateboard industry has represented itself as an aggressive and transgressive activity and lifestyle since the 1970s, Steve Rocco, ironically a freestyler himself, amplified the machismo image of skateboarding in the late 80s and early 90s through his board company World Industries and magazine Big Brother. These two business ventures promoted skateboarding as a gritty and degenerative street culture whereby engaging in dangerous acts on urban structures, street skating, and demonstrating pain tolerance and aggression when falling were markers of this unruly and stoic masculinity that became writers' currency for magazine coverage and credibility. Oh, I think it turned off. It'll say, yeah, thank you. Um, the magazine in particular The magazine in particular included images of blood, broken bones, and confrontations with law enforcement as markers of manly aggression, and describing abnormal tricks, attire, and lifestyle choices as gay to denigrate men was also a common practice. Rocco's board enterprise World Industries also marketed skateboard culture as gritty and edgy through running advertisements in Thrasher and Transworld magazines that conflated the practice with sex and drugs. Taken together, these business pursuits promoted uncouth masculinity and lifestyle that privileged risk taking, rebellion, and chauvinist conduct, which became hallmarks of the core skater image at that time. This shift in skateboarding's mainstream values not only subordinated freestyle as effeminate or non heteronormative due to its emphasis on mostly men enacting refined, graceful routines to music for relatively safe contest environments, it also catapulted the subdiscipline into its dark age, the period from 1992 through 2000, when most brands stopped manufacturing freestyle boards and no one organized freestyle contests. Freestyle disappeared into darkness, and to borrow Ian Borden's words, became subordinated as skateboarding's feminine or homosexual other. Its emphasis on grace and technique contrasting with the overt risk-taking of much transition in street skating. And this 1992 Plan B advertisement featured in Thrasher is one example of this homophobic aversion toward freestyle. As we can see, freestyle is not even shown in this ad, which further implicates that kind of showing freestyle was kind of taboo. To resuscitate their scene, freestylers who previously relied on the dominant skateboard industry for contest organization and sponsorships needed to work together and rebuild their sub-practice from the bottom up. So the foundation for the freestyle revival was laid in 1995 when Dan Gesmer and Stephanie Aukeson co-founded the International Network for Flatland Freestyle Skateboarding, which was essentially a newsletter that they mailed out to freestylers across the globe. And this newsletter eventually evolved into the F Magazine online forum that enabled freestylers to form a tight-knit community when there were no contests. Then, in March of 2000, Aukeson revived the freestyle contest circuit by organizing the Swedish Freestyle Open, which was the first contest since 1992 and comprised 6 riders. And in November of that year, Bill Robertson, hi Bill, organized the World Championships in San Francisco, which was the first freestyle contest in the US following the sub-practice's hiatus. At that contest, Aukeson and the late Bob Staton formed the World Freestyle Skateboard Association as a means to promote contest activity. And these efforts amid dark times in the late 90s and early 2000s fostered a bright future for the sub-practice, evidenced by the significant rise in contests over the past 26 years. And to illustrate the scene's growth, here are all the contests that happened in the first 3 years of the 21st century. Compare this to the 21 freestyle contests organized in 2025. And despite this growth, the dominant skate industry continues to cast freestyle as dead and ridicule it as the non-normative, non-heteronormative other of skateboarding. And by way of example, here's a homophobic remark toward our subdiscipline that someone spray painted at the Tucson Thunderdome event last month. So it still persists. But freestylers have leveraged their illegitimated image as dead and non-heteronormative to stay alive, keeping our scene relatively small and developing an insular subculture that operates in resistance to the dominant skateboard industry is how we maintain our tight-knit community. As professional writer Tony Gale states, with freestyle being so marginalized for so long, we became this tight knit tribe that was very self policing because we were protecting it. And to be honest, it still does need a certain degree of protectionism because it is still, like in Marxist theory terms, it is an opposing ideology to the hegemony of modern skateboarding. And any opposing ideology either is stamped out or subsumed. So you kind of have to say no. We need gatekeepers because you need to keep this safe to ensure that it continues to exist for the next generation, that it still has the essence of what makes it what it is, unquote. And freestylers, including myself, fear that we might lose control over and the ability to enter our community if it becomes too widespread. And freestyle companies also denounce any involvement from the mainstream skateboard world. And the freestyle company Moonshine even screen prints keeping freestyle dead on their product. Indeed, because larger companies have briefly stocked freestyle products for their own capitalist gain with the intention to alter and subsequently undermine our sub-practice, many freestylers prefer that the sub-practice stays dead in the eyes of the dominant skateboard industry. Lastly, the freestyle community is also a safe space for the outcasts, the neurodivergent, the non-binary, the queer skater, and the nerdy in skateboarding, a welcoming and diverse sociality that we fear will be lost if the dominant skate industry attempts to intervene and mainstream our sub-practice. So while giving this talk on freestyle to a mostly street skating audience might seem antithetical to our keeping freestyle dead mantra, I think it's important for the dominant skateboard industry to acknowledge how its hypermasculinity has excluded and overshadowed other pockets of skateboard culture. And my intention with this presentation is to revise erroneous discourse on our subdiscipline and shed light on how my freestyle peers and I are navigating the margins of skateboarding. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right, time for a couple questions. Back where? Comment.
Really good talk. That was really cool to see. I don't know a lot about freestyle, so it was very cool to hear. One thing I wanted to ask that you didn't really touch on was kind of like how does the freestyle community grapple with that history of your like the forefathers of freestyle being Rodney and Rocco and Don Brown all being part of the industry and then kind of shunning that history calling you or calling their own practice gay and then like moving on to street skating.
Yeah.
What is that like in your guys' community in terms of like that's who built the entire practice, but then also completely rejected
Yeah.
it later on?
Oh, thank you so much for your question. And you're kind of tapping into what is known as like the freestyle conspiracy. So like a lot of freestyle pros in the 80s, when freestyle died, they moved on to industry jobs. Like, Per Wellender starts Birdhouse with Tony Hawk, and Bullen and Rocco with World Industries, and so forth and so on. Pierre Andre with Etnies. Um, but what ended up happening was a lot of freestylers kind of moved on during that time, and think my friend Tony Gale, he's a pro in England, and was saying that when he started skating in the early 2000s, there there were no pros to teach them. They had to reverse engineer everything. Like they had to sift through old skateboarder and thrasher magazines just to figure out how to do a basic kickflip. And I'm not talking about the ollie kickflip. Um, and it was very much like really really difficult. And I think there's this in freestyle skateboarding, when someone's like Rodney Mullen, when we do freestyle tricks, we're like Randy Mueller, who is that? Because it's kind of like, we there's this like this attitude of he hasn't he's not even in the scene. And so hopefully I'm answering your question. Yeah, thank you so much.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
One. Go back here. Kind of avoiding this side. Not really.
Thank you. Last night we were speaking, and I found out that you were a freestyle skater, and I brought up the Rick McCrank Vice video that I thought was really awesome, and I'd never seen freestyle skating in that way, and I was like, holy shit, this is super epic. And you had brought up that there's a bit of contention in the freestyle community about that video.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what you guys think about that, because I'm sure for a lot of us, we had never seen freestyle in that way.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. Um, this that episode came out shortly after I started competing, and uh, I remember the freestyle community was kind of like, very like fussy about it, about the way we were represented, because the contest, the World Roundup that they were covering, it's held at a rodeo, or it held at a rodeo. It's no longer a thing, but um, the way the episode represented us was kind of like a circus act at the rodeo, like a sideshow, rather than a really important international event. I mean, at the time, that was like 2017 when they were documenting that. That was the largest freestyle competition in the world, garnering like over 60 competitors, had the most international roster, and whenever they were like showing old clips of freestyle, it was like Primo and Diane doing their like SeaWorld routines, and then a lot of my freestyle peers were like, "Oh, that makes us look so gimmicky. This is not a good representation of what we do." And yeah, so yeah, hopefully I answered your question. Thank you so much.